Alright, welcome back to another video. In the last video, we added spinning cube or spinning object, kind of like a coin, and we went over vibe coding and why vibe coding is really cool and interactive and fun. So let's continue talking about vibe coding. The last time we created this spinning cube, again, if we play test it, you could see the cube is spinning kind of like a collectible or something from a game. And here you can see it's just like we want to it almost feels like we should just be able to run it over, just like boop, and it like disappears. So let's go ahead and add that destroy script to this. So when the player hits it, it'll destroy itself. And then it's like a collectible, and we could do more later, but we would be creating a collectible. So first I would create a script, but we want to have our idea. We're destroying it on collision. So there's two ways the player can interact with this easily. It's either on overlap or on collision or like on hit. So on hit would mean that two objects collide, like they don't go into each other at all. Like they're boop and they like bounce off each other. That's a hit. Overlap is when something actually overlaps the object or the collision. And to show you more what that looks like, if I select this object and I turn on this, like this little edit collider, and I move this out, this now has collision out here. So if I were to play test it, you'll see that the cube actually can hit me out here. See, I was getting hit like from the side of the cube, which is weird. So generally we have objects that are matching their physical shape. But you can add like another collider here, so I could copy this and I could paste it as a new. And then I'll just move this up. And you'll see I can take this and do is trigger. And then I could scale this. And now I get this like scaled collider around it. And it would make it so that this object had overlap around it. So if I get anywhere near this object, it'll delete itself. That's one way to do it. Or another way to do it is just instead of taking this cube, like if I wanted the player to just pass right through it, I could, or other objects could pass right through it just by changing this collider to trigger right here. And now it has no collider, so it just has a collider that checks for triggers or overlap events or hit events. That's what that would do. When we turn it to a trigger, now it's just looking to see if something triggers it. And you would be able to walk right through it. So I'll show you what that looks like. So now that I've turned this to trigger, when I walk up to it, I can just pass right through it, which is cool, but it's also like bad if you don't have any code applied to it because it kind of just like fades like this and it does this like no clipping glitch. So make sure when you're doing this, you want to actually be able to trigger something because otherwise they're just going to kind of no clip through things. So you can do it either way. You can have a second box collider that is trigger and it's scaled up a little bit. So you get close to it and something happens, or you could turn off the box collider by making is trigger active and only have one box collider. So now you can pass through the object, but if you go inside the object, it'll trigger it. So that's how triggering works with box colliders. And you could also do on hit, but we're going to do box collider is trigger. And this is the kind where you pass through it. So if the player goes into the object, it'll trigger. All right, welcome to a quick side note. I just want to go over a few things before we move forward. So the first thing I want to talk about is adding colliders or collision the proper way. Previously, I right-clicked and I copied it and then pasted it. The normal way is to go to Add Component and then type COL, short for collision. And in here, you can see lots of different colliders. You see 2D colliders. Those are used normally for 2D games. You have Capsule Collider, which is normally used for NPCs or other objects in the game. And you have Box Collider, which is exactly what it sounds like, and it's used for box collision. So I click that and it adds it to the bottom. And then if I want to move it up, I can just left-click and drag it and move it to where I want. Now in here, you can see it starts off without the trigger selected. So we can just turn this off or on, depending on what we want. And if I turn it off on both of them and I play test, we'll notice that when we run into the object, nothing's going to happen. The code down here is not going to do anything. It's just going to be a solid object, 2 colliders on it. Now, if I want to make sure that that code runs, I can make sure to turn these on. And now when I run into the object, it will run that code, which is to delete itself. So here we can walk over it and it deletes itself. So that's why it's important to make sure when you're setting up your colliders, you know whether you want it to be a collider that's meant to be a solid collider and function in the world as an object, or if you want it to be a trigger that's triggering code. Another cool thing to talk about is whether or not you need to see it. So if you want to trigger things in the world without the player being aware of it, you can scroll up to the top and turn off Mesh Render. Now it would just be like an event that happens in the world. So if the player was walking along and they hit something, hit one of these that you can't see, the player wouldn't know anything happened, but you could make whatever you want happen in the world. You could make fireworks go off or a trap happen or spawn enemies. It's just a good way to make things happen when a player interacts or runs into it. And then if you want them to see it, like if it's a button or a platform that when they step on, something happens, you would have your mesh renderer or multiple assets, child assets attached to this object to create an object that the player could interact with and knowingly trigger something. So that's a cool thing you can do as well. And the last thing to talk about is different ways to make things happen in the world. This way that we're talking about is based on collision. So if something overlaps the object or if something hits the object, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be kind of like player inputs. So I'll hit play just to show you what player inputs look like. This is known as player inputs, and you can make things happen when the player presses buttons. Another interesting way to make things happen is raycast. So these objects that I have set up can be picked up, but only if the player is raycasting and hitting the object. So if the object is near the player, it tries to detect if the player is looking at it. And if the player is not looking at it, nothing happens. So if I press the pickup button right here next to it, nothing happens. But if I look at it and press it, now I can pick up the object. So that's how raycast works. It fires out from the camera or an object to detect if something else is hit. There's other ways to detect things as well. For instance, a good example would be right here. There's distance between the player and this object. So we could check the distance between the two objects to see if something needs to happen. And yeah, there's lots of ways to do it. The main thing to know is when you're setting up the code, you need to be aware of however you want to do it. And if you don't know, you can always add to your prompt to explain how to implement the code that the AI will give you or whatever you ask it for. And that's one way to learn how to implement it inside of Unity as well. So hopefully that helps clarify collision and triggering events and things like that. And yeah, we'll jump back into the video. So now I need to go to my AI. And here in my AI, I'll just do like before. I'll say, can you make a C# script or Unity that destroys the object? It's the text to when the player overlaps or triggers the player. So it says, can you make a C# script for Unity that destroys, I spelled that wrong, so let me fix that, destroys the object it's attached to when the player overlaps or triggers the collider on the object. I'll hit enter and let it do its own thing. And now it's got destroy on trigger. Here's the name of the script, so copy this. I'll just drag, select, right click, copy. I'll go back to Unity, and in my testing folder, I'll just create C# script, and I'll hit Control V to paste it. So now we got this script right here, destroy on trigger. I'll double click to open it, and that'll open up in here inside my editor, my code editor. And I'll go back to my AI, and I'll scroll down a little bit so I can select all of this. So I'll copy this, my destroy on trigger, copy. I'll click this copy right here, and I'll go back to my code, and I'll say drag select or edit select all, or Control A on the keyboard, and I'll hit Control V or Control A on the keyboard, edit paste. And now we got this script right here. We'll hit Control S or save right here at the top, and we'll go back to Unity, and we'll let it update. Once it's done updating, we can select our object here, and we can drag destroy on collision onto it and see what it gave us. So here it's looking for player tag. This is important to talk about real quick since it came up. Our player normally has a tag attached to it right here, tag, at the top, player tag. So we got player and then tag player. Now, this is a good way to do it. You could also do it just by targeting the actual player name or the name of the object player. But this is better because player tag is going to stay the same always. If you had more than one player, like player 1, player 2, player 3, you want to target all of them. And the way you would do that is by having a tag. So this is a good way to do it. So here we'll just go deselect on our player. We'll select this object. We'll make sure it says player as the player tag. So when we overlap this, it should delete this cube. So let's give it a test and see. So let's walk up to it, and it deleted it. So that's cool because now we could actually create like a path of coins or collectibles that we could then place throughout the map. And if we could get to them, then we can delete them and collect them. And if we wanted to, we could have another strip to add to our score, and we can track the score and see how good a person does. So we're deleting them as we go. And here you can see I deleted that one. And that's kind of a cool thing. You could also use something like this as like health pickups. So you could have like a health pickup, and then it deletes itself, and then it'll respawn a new one after a certain amount of time. So it'll destroy itself, and then but it'll trigger something that'll respawn a new one. So that's a cool way to do things like that. And yeah, that's how you can destroy an object. And it's also modular. If you didn't notice, we have two separate scripts. So we have our spinner script and our destroy on trigger script, which is really cool because we can attach these scripts to different things and achieve different things with them. So if I had another object that I wanted, when you overlap it, it'll destroy itself. I could use this on that object or any other object like that. And then same for spinner. If I wanted something to spin, I could use it on another object. So perfect example is I could close this down, and I could right click out here and say like 3D object. We'll say, in this case, we'll just say cylinder. And if I took this cylinder and I added spinner to it, you'll notice it will, well, it might not show if it spins around its axis a certain way. Let's see. Yeah, it's just spinning normally. So let's put it on all axes so we can definitely see it rotating. And then you'll notice it just hops right on there, and it should start spinning that object as well. So, and these could be different. Right now they're matching each other's spin, but if I were to turn off play mode and change one of them, so put this to 0 on the Y, and now they shouldn't match. They should be similar, but not matching. I could also change the speed. That would be good. Let me change the speed too. So we'll change the speed of this one to like 42, maybe, like less than half the speed. And we'll see what happens. Now you can see this one's slower, and it's not spinning in all directions like the other one. That's kind of cool, is it has its own abilities now, and you can have it and put it on different objects and things like that, and use it in different ways. So that's a cool thing about having modular scripts. And I hope you enjoy it. Again, vibe coding is pretty fun, especially when you start to build in modular and understand how to quickly implement things inside of Unity. And yeah, have fun with it, create new ideas and new things, whatever you can think of. I'm pretty sure you could create it with vibe coding. It's really just on you to figure out how to talk to the AI. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, later.